There are roads men dare not walk. Paths swallowed by silence, cursed with whispers of the dead. Yet somewhere along those paths lies Timbuktu, a city of gold, of wisdom, of secrets too great for ordinary eyes. But to reach it, one must first step onto the road the elders forbid, the road where the earth itself remembers blood. Welcome to Tales by Limar. Please like, share and subscribe. The village of Kumbi Sala lay at the edge of the desert, its mud brick walls glowing red under the setting sun. Traders came and went, carrying salt, gold, and tales of Timbuktu, the city said to be carved from dreams and guarded by shadows. But for Malik, a restless young traveler with eyes that burned with curiosity, Timbuktu was more than a story. It was destiny. One evening, as Malik wandered the marketplace, he heard an old griot whisper to a group of children. No man finds Timbuktu by chance. The desert swallows the unworthy. Only those who dare the forbidden road will see its gates. But beware, the road is alive. It listens. It punishes. The words clung to Malik's heart. That night, he visited the griot under the stars. The old man, blind in both eyes yet sharp in spirit, handed him a map drawn in faded ink on goat skin. The lines bent strangely, as if they moved when stared at too long. This map does not guide, it tests, the griot croaked. Follow it, and the road will reveal who you are. Malik tucked the map into his satchel. The decision was already made. At dawn, he would set foot where others trembled to tread. The desert was vast, an endless ocean of sand. Malik rode with his camel, guided by the shifting lines of the griot's map. At first, the road seemed like nothing, just dry earth and dunes. But then, he began to notice things. Bones half buried in sand, as if the earth had swallowed entire caravans. Whispers carried by the wind, voices speaking in languages older than memory. The unsettling sense that the dunes themselves were watching. On the third day, Malik's water jar shattered mysteriously during the night. His camel brayed in fear at unseen shapes moving at the edge of the firelight. When he awoke, the map had changed. The inked lines shifted into new directions. Malik's hands trembled. The road is alive, he whispered to himself. By evening, he came upon a stone pillar half buried in sand. Carved upon it was a warning in ancient script. Turn back, or offer your blood. Malik's breath caught, but instead of turning back, he pressed forward. His heart whispered that beyond this terror lay greatness, and perhaps the truth of Timbuktu. That night, the desert grew colder than death. Malik built a fire, but the flames sputtered unnaturally, as though something choked the air. Then they came. From the shadows rose three figures cloaked in black, their faces hidden, their movements silent. They circled him slowly, as though measuring his soul. Malik clutched the dagger at his belt, though his hands quivered. One of the guardians spoke, its voice like sand sliding through stone. You walk the road of the condemned. What do you seek? Malik's voice cracked but did not falter. I seek Timbuktu. The guardians drew closer, and one lifted a hand. The fire died instantly. Darkness swallowed him whole. In that pitch black, Malik felt their cold fingers brush against his chest, as though searching his heart for weakness. At last, they stepped back. If you would continue, you must pay the price of silence. Speak not a word until the dunes themselves command you. And with that, they vanished into the night, leaving Malik alone, his throat heavy with a vow he dared not break. But in the distance, faint and golden, he thought he saw it, the shimmer of towers rising like a mirage, the promise of Timbuktu. Dawn peeled a thin ribbon of silver over the dunes. Malik woke with sand on his lashes and the guardian's command pounding in his chest, speak not a word until the dunes themselves command you. He wrapped his headscarf tighter, leaving only his eyes to the wind. The fire he'd built in the night had died without smoke, like a throat closed by fear. He tested the air. The desert always spoke first to the nose, the faint bitter tang of harmattan dust, the dry smell of stone turned to powder. His water gourd felt lighter than memory. He counted the sips he had left with his fingers, 4 for today, 3 for tomorrow, 2 for a day after that if the map cheated him again. The map lay across his knee like a living thing. The ink had shifted while he slept, drawing a thin crescent west, then curling south, as if it were tracing a dune's leeward slip-face. Malik closed his eyes and tried something the griot had not taught him. He listened. The wind whooshed across the ridge and tumbled down the sand face in a soft esrich, a whisper like a teacher urging a child to keep still. He started before the sun broke free, traveling in the blue hour to save water. The camel's pads sank and rose with a steady patience that mocked his urgency. By mid-morning, the heat sharpened to a white blade. He pitched a shade tent with his cloak and a stick, the old traveler's trick of making a small triangle of night in the middle of the day. Under that triangle, he ate exactly 5 dates. He sucked them until they were nothing, then let the pits rest on his tongue to fool his thirst. On the far dune, a shape watched him. It was human, thin, wrapped in indigo, a scarf drawn high. When he stood, it stood. When he waved, it did not. Malik climbed, sand pouring around his ankles. At the crest, the shape vanished, leaving only footprints that came from nowhere and ended in mid-slope. He crouched and read them like letters: deep toe, shallow heel, someone moving uphill fast, sharp edges, prints made when the sand was cool, faint ripples across the impression, wind had licked them only once. The watcher was new. Close. A small stone bounced near his foot. He turned. On the slope, a woman stood as if the dune had pushed her up to breathe. Her indigo veil gleamed, and her eyes, rimmed with kohl, were steady. She held up a palm. On it, a circle was drawn in ash. She scratched a line through it, then pointed to the sun, a simple, silent message: noon is the knife, avoid the circle, travel on the line. Malik tapped his throat, then pressed his lips, vow. She nodded once, unsurprised, as if most roads worth walking demanded silence. She dropped a leather pouch at his feet, cooled stones, slick with damp. When he held them to his tongue, the stones bled sweet water. He looked up, but she was already picking her way down the dune, barefoot, her toes writing quick grammar in the sand. Before she disappeared, she pointed at the sky and drew 3 dots with her finger, a belt of stars. Then she tapped the north edge of the dune's crest with her heel. Find your way with what is fixed, her body said, not with what pretends to be a road. That evening Malik studied the sky. The North Star held like a nail, Orion's belt laid a faint rule across the dark, the crescent moon leaned as if pouring light toward a horizon he did not yet deserve. He used the camel's shadow at dusk as a compass, the oldest trick, but steady: shadows point east at sundown, west at sunrise. He scratched those notes with a bone splinter on the back of his map, turning myth into method. At midnight the wind changed. The dune below him sang, a low, vibrating hum like a giant's breath moving through a drum. Malik startled. He had heard the griot's stories of singing dunes, but never expected the sand to carry a voice that large. The hum rose and fell like language without words. The guardian's command burned at the back of his tongue: do not speak. He pressed his teeth together until the sound faded and the stars came forward again. Before sleep took him, he shaped a discipline: walk in the blue hours, rest under narrow shade, read the sand, use the sky, count the dates, save the words. Knowledge was weight that could be carried without breaking the camel's knees. On the 4th morning, the map led him onto a plain so wide it made his heart feel small. The sand there was not sand, it was white crust split like pottery, acres of it, hard enough for the camel's feet to tap like drumsticks. In the distance, he saw rectangles stacked on sleds, each rectangle the size of a man's chest. He knew the stories: slabs hewn where the earth sweated salt, dragged by caravans until cities tasted. A column of dust uncoiled from the horizon, thin at first, then thick as rope. The camel became a trembling pillar beneath him. Malik dug a cloth from his satchel, wet it, bound it across his mouth and nose, and pulled the animal to its knees. He hid beside it, making a windbreak with his back, the way old traders used their bodies as walls for their beasts. The storm arrived with no warning except a hiss, sand shot through the air like a million needles, and then the world was brown night. He counted. Could devour them. At the edge of the smudge, the earth sank and deepened into green shade. A gelta pooled there, dark as tea. They cupped water with both hands, but Malik pulled them back and forced them to sip, wait, the only safe way to greet a well after thirst. The old man cursed softly, then smiled when his belly didn't cramp. They kept each other's eyes while they drank, a simple practice that all caravans believed in. No one turns away while others drink. Eyes make the water fair. When the old man could stand, he touched Malik's shoulder. I am Khalil. You saved us, and we cannot pay you. He gestured toward the slabs. But we can carry weight for you. Share your burden and make your shadow small. Malik bowed in thanks and set a coil of rope and a pack of dates onto their sled. When he turned to leave, Khalil caught his sleeve and whispered, if you reach what we all dream of, remember this, Timbuktu feeds on knowledge more than gold. Men who carry words walk farther than men who chase coins. Malik walked on as the sun broke into plates and the gelta mirrored a piece of sky at his heels. The bowl and the pillar held his blood like a secret. Somewhere behind it, a door he had not yet earned unlocked one thin hinge. That evening, as he drew his shade triangle and counted the remaining dates, 3, 2, 1, he traced a new line on the back of his map, help the living before you ask the dead for permission. His vow kept his mouth closed, but every choice he made wrote a sentence in a language the road respected. The next day, the sand decided to become sea. Waves unrolled without water, barcan upon barcan, crescent after crescent, each one pointing like 1,000 knives the same way. Malik learned to walk the backs of them where the wind packed the ridge. He learned to descend the lee with knees soft so the dune wouldn't swallow him. The camel learned to follow his ankles as if they were a bell. Near sunset, the desert offered a gift and a lie. The gift was cool wind. The lie was a city rising on the horizon, towers, minarets, arches braided with shadow. Malik had heard the word for it, mirage. The eye drinks what the tongue cannot have. He narrowed his gaze until the towers melted into smoke, then into heat, then into nothing. At the same moment, the dune began to sing. The hum rolled through the sand and under his ribs. He felt it in his teeth, his knees, his heart like an old drum. The guardian's words cracked open inside him, speak not a word until the dunes themselves command you. He stepped to the dune's lip and waited. The hum surged, then faded. He waited longer, letting the silence stretch until it was a rope that could pull a gate. The wind slipped, and the dune answered in a long descending moan. It felt less like sound and more like permission. Malik lifted his head and gave the desert his first word in days, truth. The singing stilled. The hush that followed was not empty, it was full, like a library. Quiet. Sand drew back from the basin below as if a giant hand had brushed it smooth. A road revealed itself, narrow, stony, old. On each side, standing stones hunched like tired guardians. The nearest one was engraved with lines that matched his map, and under them, 3 words he could read without help, blood. Burden. Belief. You have given blood, the road seemed to say. You have shared burden. Now, what do you believe? He descended, each step the sound of a page turning. At the basin's floor, he found what might have been a gate if gates could be built from air. It looked like heat that had been hammered and cooled, a rectangle cut from shimmering day. Through it, the air itself seemed deeper. 3 figures unpeeled from the stones, the guardians, faces banded, hands empty. This time their silence weighed more than their questions. The one in the middle reached into its cloak and drew out a tablet of clay etched with tiny marks. Malik had seen marks like that only once, on the griot's travel box, the handwriting of scholars, the language that held cities together when memory failed. The guardian pointed to Malik's chest, then to the tablet, then to the horizon where the mirage had died. Malik understood. What do you carry within you that will not vanish when heat rises? He knelt and took his bone splinter and wrote on the back of his map, not a route, not a plea. He wrote what he had learned since the road took hold of him. To conserve is to reach farther than the strong who spend. To share is to make your water colder and your shade larger. To read the world, wind, stars, stone, is to be led by truth, not by fear. To help first is to travel with witnesses who guard your name. To be silent is to hear what no one else can teach. He turned the map so the guardians could read. The middle one held it up to the last breath of light. The words glimmered, as if the ink remembered the drop of blood and the weight of a rescued man's feet. The guardian placed the clay tablet into Malik's palms. It was warm, as if it had spent its life near a cooking fire. He could not read the script, but he could feel its meaning, a map of ideas, not places, ink that made paths through time, not sand. The air gate brightened. In it Malik thought he saw a city that was not a lie, mud mosques with wooden beams jutting like ribs, courtyards full of low voices, rooms where men and women leaned over books with knives of light in their eyes, bundles of manuscripts tied with leather like gifts saved for grandchildren. He heard the faint scrape of reed pens. He smelled ink, the sweet metallic breath of words. The guardian on the left raised a hand and finally spoke, not with a menace but with the flat authority of a road sign you ignore only if you want to die. If you come for gold, you will drown in sand. If you come for names, you will vanish with echoes. If you come for knowledge, the city will lend you its breath and take none of yours you cannot give. Malik's throat ached with unused words. He stepped forward until the skin on his cheeks prickled, half heat, half something like a welcome. He took one last look at the map that had moved under his hands like a live thing. He folded it, slid it into his satchel, and lifted the clay tablet higher, a torch made of memory. He spoke his second word, shaped by everything he had suffered to earn it, learn. The gate widened. The guardians stepped aside, leaving footprints that filled themselves as soon as they were made, as if the city had no interest in being approached by men who wanted to walk backward. Malik crossed the threshold. The air on the other side was cooler, though the sun was still a coin in the sky. A mud wall rose, curved and ribbed, jingereber by rumor and by feeling, though no sign named it. He passed under an arch where shards of blue tile winked from the clay like pieces of fallen sky. People moved with the steadiness of those who had worked out agreements long ago, traders with salt on their hands, students with sand in their cuffs, teachers with ink-stained fingers. A boy ran by carrying a stack of paper bound in twine and slipped a page. Malik bent, caught it with the care one uses to scoop water. On the page, a drawing, stars, arranged in a triangle and a belt, with a careful line noting north. He smiled, and the smile surprised him. He had learned this on the road. Here, too, it mattered. An old woman touched the clay tablet in his hand and nodded him toward a courtyard. There, a circle of people sat under a canopy, reading aloud one sentence at a time while others repeated the words and copied them with reeds. In the center, a low table held ink in tiny bowls and sand to dry the writing. It looked, Malik thought, like a well disguised as a table. A man with a beard like a broom looked up from his book. "You have traveled the road that costs the most," he said. "What did you pay?" Malik rested his palm on his throat. "Silence," he said softly, and added, with gratitude that felt like water, and pride. The man smiled. "Then you have earned your first lesson. Here, we spend loudness last. Sit. Hold a pen. Make a path that others can follow in the rain." Malik sat. He dipped the reed into ink. The first line he copied was not a spell, nor a map, nor a warning. It was the simplest sentence he had ever read that still felt like a door. Knowledge turns a forbidden road into a shared one. He did not look back to see if the gate had closed. When the desert allowed you through, you did not insult it by checking the lock. The clay tablet he had carried was placed on a low altar in the manuscript house, joining countless others brought by those who had survived the road. Each tablet, the scholars said, was proof. The desert did not destroy everything. It tested, it filtered, it prepared. Malik had come seeking Timbuktu's gold, its myths, its wonder. Instead, he discovered that the city's greatest treasure was not its walls or its markets, it was knowledge kept alive by sacrifice. Books stacked higher than towers, scrolls wrapped in leather like newborns, words copied and guarded as if they were the true currency of survival. That night, Malik walked to the rooftop. From there, the desert spread like a vast black sea under the stars. The same North Star he had once leaned on for direction now hung above the minarets like a promise fulfilled. He thought of the blood he had given, the silence he had endured, the lives he had saved along the way. He understood now, every step on the forbidden road was a lesson, every suffering a page, every silence a paragraph in the book of who he had become. The wind carried faint whispers, the same guardians, perhaps, watching from the dunes. But this time their voices did not threaten. They blessed. You came with thirst. You left with wisdom. Guard it as we guarded the road. Malik smiled. He knew his journey was not over. One day, others would try to walk the forbidden road, some with greed, others with courage. And when they did, they would need guidance. He decided he would remain in Timbuktu not just as a student, but as a keeper of the road, a living bridge between the desert and the city. He would teach others the truths he had learned, that survival demands knowledge, that silence can be wisdom, that sharing is strength, and that every step toward learning is a step away from death. As dawn touched the sky, Malik whispered a vow to himself. Let the road test them. Let Timbuktu teach them. And let my story remind them that no path is truly forbidden when walked with humility, courage, and the hunger to learn. The gates of Timbuktu stood behind him like guardians of eternity, and the desert, endless and merciless, stretched before him. Malik was no longer just a traveler, he was a story carved into the sands, one that would outlive the bones buried beneath the dunes. Moral of the story. The road to greatness is never easy. It demands sacrifice, discipline, and humility. Wealth fades, power crumbles, but knowledge is the treasure that outlasts time. The forbidden road to Timbuktu teaches us that true discovery is not in reaching the destination, but in what we learn, who we help, and how we grow along the journey. Thank you for walking with us on the forbidden road to Timbuktu. This was not just a tale of danger and discovery, but a reminder that every journey tests us, and only those who seek wisdom above riches truly prevail. If this story kept you at the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Tales by Limar for more unforgettable African folktales, mysteries, and lessons that live far beyond the last word. Which lesson struck you the most, the sacrifice, the silence, or the thirst for knowledge? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, remember, some roads may be forbidden, but the wisdom they hold is worth the journey.